Welcome to the Center of Light Radio with spiritual teacher, intuitive, musician, composer, and best-selling author of The Divine Principle, Anchoring Heaven on Earth, your host, Keith Anthony Blanchard.
Coast to coast, pole to pole, all around the world on the internet. Thanks to the marvel of technology, I'm coming at you live from the Inception Radio Network all around the world. This is Keith Anthony Blanchard, and you're listening to Center of Light Radio, Center of Divine Unfoldment and Reinforcement Radio for the Soul. Strap in all my brother and sister astronauts as we launch for inner space. RPM, recognize, plug in, and manifest your life. Are you a spiritual seeker who's ready to move forward? If you're wanting to shift from struggling to feeling that life is effortless, send me an email to book a free session with me. 30 minutes, 45 minutes, however long it takes to get you to begin to move into that window of your best life. Send me an email at keithanthonyblanchard@gmail.com and say, Mr. Blanchard, I want that free session you promised me. You can bet. I will show you how you can move into your RPM program. Manifest your life effortlessly, abundance, spiritual awakening. And my guest tonight, Mr. JP Sears, and we can talk about a whole bunch of stuff about spirituality in a very different kind of way. If you are a follower of Center of Light Radio, you've been following my work for a while, go to centeroflightradio.com or keithanthonyblanchard.com, same page. You'll see a subscription form. Fill it out. You'll have access to my monthly newsletter program, which is going to start at the beginning of the year, but also, check this out, you're going to have access to everything I've created up until this point for free. Why would you do that, Keith? Because my money does not come from me. My money does not come from me, and it does not come from other people. My money comes from me being grounded and connected to Source. So up until this point, you will begin to receive bundles of my previous works. And all it takes is for you to fill out that form. Also, while you're there, you'll see a red Ferrari on that opening page. Click on it. It'll take you to the RPM program. It'll tell you what you get, and it will tell you what you will be able to create once I hand you these tools of empowerment. Recognize, plug in, and manifest. Recognize who and what God is. You begin to tap into that after I start providing you some of the tools. And once you make the connection with these two, it gets really, really easy, really, really quick. Go to youtube.com/Center of Light Radio and subscribe. Give me some information about some of the interviews you're hearing. Leave me a comment. Give me a like. Let me know what it is you're wanting as guests on the show. I'd be glad to do the research and eke out those people and make that happen. Now it's time to get down to Center of Light Radio business. Let me tell you about my guest tonight, JP Sears. The show title is How to Be Ultra Spiritual. You better hang on for this one, y'all. JP Sears is an emotional healing coach, YouTuber, author, international teacher, speaker at events, world traveler, and curious student of life. His work empowers people to live more meaningful lives. JP is the author of How to Be Ultra Spiritual. He is very active with his online videos where he encourages healing and growth through his humorous and entertainingly informative videos, including his hit Ultra Spiritual comedy series, which, check this out, which has accumulated over 100 million views. You can find more about my guest today at www.awakenwithjp.com. Welcome to Center of Light, sir. It's good to have you here.
Keith, thank you, brother. I'm happy to be here. And I think I might be having a little issue with my video, but I'd just like to assure everybody I'm insanely handsome. But most importantly, brother, I'm so honored to be here with you.
And yeah, and if your video seems to come back on, feel free to go ahead and engage it. I know that you are in Costa Rica right now doing that guru thing. Is that right?
Doing a little bit of a chill out thing, actually. Having a little bit of a breather, some time to exhale with my fiance Amber, and sweating my butt off too.
Yeah. JP, thank you for being here, sir. Listen, I've been watching like everybody else has, and you're growing like the plague in a good way. All these videos that you're doing, and what I really like about what you're doing, sir, is that you are providing insight through humor. And we know that humor in and of itself is a gateway to higher consciousness. And somehow you are brilliant enough, on purpose, to be able to tap into this part of yourself that somehow, through sarcasm, seems to create a greater window for people to step through, to touch an aspect through their self. Did this just come along naturally for you, or did you sit down and go, I got to do something to become visible? How did this take place for you, sir?
Well, one, I appreciate hearing that perspective and how you see my work and valuing the messages in it. And, I would say my work has been a collage of me being the blind man, not knowing where the hell he's going, but somehow that helps me find my way. And one thing that has come natural for me is a sense of humor. That's, I had that since my childhood. That's one of the ways that I dealt with pain as a kid. Also one of the ways I created joy. But as far as bringing that to the light and, call it the professional realm, I didn't have like a premeditated, like amazingly intelligent plan. Not at all. I just thought, let me make a comedy video. Let me talk about being spiritual and essentially show people what I consider to be obstacles in the spiritual path that are, but I'll just portray them as things to do. So, but here in hindsight, I can very much see that expressing a concept through the language of humor really helps people consider the concept, consider the deeper underlying message, because something about humor, because it's playful, it doesn't evoke the natural defense that our psyches normally have, when we're challenged with a new perspective. We just like to get defended and fight the new perspective so we can maintain our sense of balance, our center of gravity in our psyche. But because humor comes across as playful, it doesn't look like there's anything to defend against. So our psyches, in my experience, stay relatively undefended so that, a message can get in for consideration. And I think an analogy, I love dogs, so a little dog analogy is when my little guy Zephyr, when I've got to give him medicine, I wrap the medicine in like a piece of cheese, and it helps him swallow the medicine. But if I don't do that, if I don't wrap the medicine in something that's enticing for him, he won't swallow it. So I think humor is the cheese, if you will, that helps us swallow something into our psyches for consideration. Not for the purpose of brainwashing, but just for the purpose of inviting people to consider new perspectives.
I like that, because I think in the way that you're doing this, sir, it diminishes the opportunity for cognitive dissonance to happen, because you and I both know that when we bring something to the table, no matter how loving it is and no matter how much the person may want to receive it, if it creates a dissonance within them of something that they are integrated, and God knows how deep of a level that this is at, sticking to their core, I think the humor allows that to just kind of get all bypassed and pushed out the way, so it's easily to absorb and process, and to even be allowed into one's consciousness for consideration, as you're saying.
Yeah, I definitely believe that. I'm a firm believer that we don't always want what we need. And I think oftentimes we don't want what we need the most, but I think humor can be a little bit of an alchemist that transforms the psychological defense. And I think the other thing about it is it's entertaining. So by default, it's going to get more people's attention. And what I found, one of the really gratifying components of the work that I've been really privileged to bring to the world is people are paying attention to it. Some of these people are ones that would never otherwise be watching a sincere video of mine, a serious video or a serious message, or they never would be people who would be picking up a spiritual book. And now they pick up spiritual books because humor was the gluten-free breadcrumb that got them to start following the trail and get them in the door into a world that just didn't look enticing to them. But there was a bridge created with humor. So I think getting people into living their lives consciously is, man, it's very meaningful, and I'm grateful that humor can do that at times.
Center of Light Radio, Keith Anthony Blanchard, your host, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday nights. I'm always sitting in this captain chair, conducting affairs of the heart. My guest tonight is Mr. JP Sears, and we're speaking about how to be ultra spiritual. JP, my producer, sent me a message asking if you would be so kind to sign out and sign back into the room so we can get that video working, because as you said, we want people in the listening audience to see exactly how handsome you are, sir.
Man, for sure. Well, I'll sign off. Be right back on. Keith, don't talk about me behind my back, okay?
I'll see you shortly, everyone. For my listeners in the chat room, welcome to Center of Light Radio. While I have a moment before my guest signs back in, next week, Christmas night, thank God Christmas is on a Monday this year, I'm going to be doing a special. It's a pre-record, but I'm going to be in his chat room, and it's called a Christmas special about the life of Christ. My time with my personal spiritual experiences I've had with Christ. When I went to India to see Bhagavan Sri Satya Sai Baba, the man you see behind me in the picture, I learned of the life of Yeshua, Jesus, from people who are closer to the proximity of where Jesus actually came from. I met a gentleman once while I was there, and he says, Saidam, meaning hello, sir, or ma'am, or whatever. And he said, can I tell you about the Jesus we know here in my country? I said, absolutely. He says, trust me when I tell you, you know nothing about the life of Christ. I said, how do you say that? He says, well, if you experience if something happened in your neighborhood, an event, would you more likely believe the people in the neighborhood who know the story, or people across town who know the story? And I said, well, likely the people in the neighborhood. He said, well, trust me when I tell you, the West has it all wrong. Boy, that took me back. And he began to tell me things. So this broadcast for next Monday night, Christmas night, is going to be really, really powerful. A lot of information from my book, The Divine Principles, is going to be brought forth. A vision that Yeshua took me out of my body many, many years ago and showed me a vision of the future. And this is called My Revelation. So make sure you tune in for that. Let me see what's going on with Mr. JP Sears so we can see this good-looking redhead man. I guess they're working on it. So all my friends in the chat room, thank you very much for being here. Chat room is nice and full. I have so much technology in front of me, and besides I'm on medicine, so I'm not all here functioning and balanced, as you can hear it in my voice. But thank you for being here. I know there's questions that come through, and if I pick a certain question because it's one that catches my eye on the spot, and I'm not overlooking anybody intentionally, and I'm not picking out the questions that I think are relevant, because to you, they are very relevant. Very, very relevant. Relevant? Huh. Relevant. Mr. JP Sears, are you back with us, sir?
I think so. Can you hear me, Keith?
I hear your voice, sir, but I'm not seeing you. So I guess when we do the archive video, we're going to have to put this really cool picture of you with your flower child clothes on and that wonderful thing you have in your hair.
Yeah, well, yeah, I apologize. The video is still not working, but I guess maybe what's better is people's imaginations about what I'm wearing, what I'm not wearing.
JP, while we're still talking about the camera, once you look at that little camera icon, you'll see a little square that says start your video. Check that out. See if that helps you get back on.
Yeah, I've done that a couple times, but let me hit that again.
And if not, we'll just continue to move forward, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it looks like no stellar success
well,
here.
All you people out in listening land, go to Google and look up images. Look up JP Sears and find one of those cool-looking, groovy images you got, and just imagine that's who I'm talking to, right? So, JP, we talked about the birth of this way of teaching. And I asked you the question, but I'm not sure I was so direct with my question. Did you actually sit down and say, tomorrow I'm going to try this new approach? Or while you were doing these videos, did something just take over you and you just went with it and saw the effect and then you moved into the window even greater?
Yeah, principally the latter. When I started the videos, I thought at the time it was just going to be a one-time thing. Let me make a comedy video on spirituality. But once that was released and I sat with it for a little while, I realized like, well, this is this is pretty satisfying creatively. Let me do another one or two. And then after doing a few videos, you know, I really got the chance to see like there's a very purposeful effect happening here, and I really enjoy it. And I'm not the type of person where I figure something out and then do it. I don't like figure out how something should work and then do it. I do it and then I figure out how it works once I'm already doing it. So I typically learn through hindsight. Like I just kind of ready, fire, aim is my way of doing things. So yeah, with the video, they're just like, oh, I'm kind of Forrest Gumping my way through it, where it's like, oh, one day it feels exciting to make a comedy video. Let me do that. And then the next day, like, oh yeah, let's do another one.
JP, did you find yourself in your youth knowing there was something greater than what you were experiencing? I'm sure I would think to the level of your spiritual endowment that you knew there was something else. But when did this started taking place for you? Not necessarily the humorous videos, but you actually consciously, deliberately walking the path to expansion. What got you into that, and what field did you find yourself moving? You practice yoga. Is that what you went into right away?
Yeah, I do practice yoga, not consistently, unfortunately, but no, that wasn't my field I went into. And I think the first part of your question, yeah, as a kid, I don't know how old, but, you know, pre-teen, you know, I did feel like there's something more going on here, you know, and I was kind of raised a little bit pretend Catholic, and like I never felt any kind of connection to that. Just felt like there's something more than this, and something more than how people seem to be living their lives, something more than how I'm living my life. Didn't know what the heck it was. But then the conscious expansion came, or the beginning of it came years later. I would have been in my early 20s and got connected with a man who's become just an amazing mentor, a guy named John McMullen, of Journeys of Wisdom. So I started to do my own self-growth practice, my own healing, my own spiritual connection and evolution practice with him in a very intentional way. So it would have been, I think I was about 22. So what got me in that door, connected to the other part of your question, in my, was 18, I dropped out of college. Like, didn't know what the heck I wanted to do, but I definitely know that going to college was not what I wanted to do. So, but I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do, so I was pretty scared and insecure. So I got into personal training, like exercise-wise, helping people live better lives through exercise, which is cool. Like, it's really great work. But that got me in the door. My interest there opened the door into something deeper, which is nutrition. It's like, oh, cool. Like, wow, learning about people's insides and how food can positively, negatively, in fact, impact the body, but also the mind. Like, wow, that's amazing. And then that door of nutrition opened up another door of stress reduction, in pretty much a generic sense of the term. But that door of stress reduction then opened up another door of what I would call emotional healing, the deep workings of the human heart and psyche, and then soul. So, following that gluten-free breadcrumb trail of interest in exercise got me interested into in the depths of the human heart and soul. And this mentor, John McMullen, I just learned immense amounts from him with regard to working with myself, my own healing, my own practice, but also as a coach for other people. Because remember, I started off coaching people in exercise, but gradually just transitioned over coaching people on their inner life. Certainly not telling them what to do, but helping them connect to their own inner wisdom, their own intuition, and dare I say, their own higher self, so that they could, heal their blockages and step into more meaning and fulfillment in their life.
JP, do you help them, an emotional client, someone you're working with in this way, do you help them by bringing something to light that they may be so close to their life, which we all often are, that we can't see? And as the observer, do you say, hey, John Doe, this is what I'm seeing could be, happening with you? And do you bring it to a state of awareness for them to get the aha, and then, it allows them to take in any sort of insight you may be offering, how they can connect more to their authentic self. Is that how you go about the dance?
Yeah, I think that's certainly a part of it, helping people see the obvious, because oftentimes the obvious is the hardest thing to see, at least
hiding
in
in plain sight, huh?
For sure, because it's our own life. So of course we're biased. We have our blind spots, which is most places, most of the time. So, but also helping people look under the obvious. So, when there's a obvious challenge in their life, might be self-sabotage or finances or relationships or just a blatant dissatisfaction, depression. Also helping people look underneath that to see, well, what's driving that? Is it unresolved stuff from childhood? Is there hidden benefit where someone identifies as a victim and they get to feel the illusion of empowerment by getting more control as a victim? So helping people explore those kinds of possibilities through questions. And I think the question is never meant to be a diagnosis, but an open door into new self-awareness. And then, from there, there's specific healing practices I might guide a person through. I do a lot of inner child work. I just happen to find it as a wonderful metaphor to facilitate abstract energy movement.
So from your experience, and I'm not sure if I would even say that this is true across the board, is there one particular emotion that drives self-sabotage behavior?
Well, I'm going to get a little risky here. I think there can be many, but I would dare say the most common emotion that drives self-sabotage behavior, in my experience, is shame. I think shame is, it's an emotion that says, I feel worthless, basically, and therefore it's not comfortable. Therefore, a lot of us unconsciously try to avoid the unresolved shame that we carry. But if it's inside of us, even though we might not be aware of it, we're avoiding it, that vibrational energy of shame will seek to validate itself. In other words, the mirror will reflect to us. The mirror of our life will reflect to us what we are and what we carry. Not what we want to be, not what we think we are, but what we oftentimes carry. And I consider self-sabotage to be a wonderful teacher. Self-sabotage is an obnoxious messenger that's bringing a sacred message of ourself. And oftentimes that sacred message of ourself is, metaphorically, a wounded inner child who desperately needs our help. They might be riddled with shame, yet they've been locked in the basement of our unconscious and it needs our help. So luckily, our self-sabotage, it can be obnoxious enough that it eventually gets our attention to take a look deeper into our life, which ultimately helps us take a look deeper into ourself to find the part of us that needs our help. So I think oftentimes unresolved shame is a driving force of self-sabotage.
What type of yoga are you doing, sir? And what are the benefits you have experienced from that? And I know most people think that yoga is about relaxing and stretching, and it is about all that. But what are some of those true ultra spiritual benefits that you are getting from this practice, sir? And how long have you been doing it?
Yeah, I've been doing yoga inconsistently for, I started with a yoga DVD probably 8 years ago. Really helped me recover from a knee injury. But more recently, the past year that I've been with my fiance, and she's a yoga teacher. She teaches yoga teacher trainings. She's really been a great motivating force to do more yoga. So going to yoga classes is something like we'll do together. When we're in a town that has yoga, which luckily is most towns. So the benefit that I get is, I would dare say, the training to breathe through discomfort and be with discomfort and embrace discomfort rather than avoid it, rather than hold my breath, lean away from it. So I find that creates like a nice functional training carryover into real life, where I look at something that's challenging instead of like reactively just trying to avoid it, tense up, be defended against it, it becomes something I can embrace, take more risk on. And when the flames of it, whether it's fears or challenges, when the flames get hot, it's easier to be okay with the discomfort. So I think one of the great teachings that I get from the yoga that I've done is just because something's painful doesn't mean it's going to kill you. Just because part of me wants to react like my life is in danger doesn't mean my life is in danger. In fact, I would dare say the opposite is true, where my life becomes more alive when I embrace the discomfort and the feelings of it by breathing with it. And there's various types of yoga, but I think predominantly the type that I've practiced the most is vinyasa.
JP, you said a couple of things that are really powerful for me. It helps you and I to connect on the same wavelength. As far as some years ago, dear Lord, I hope I never have this experience again. I had a kidney stone.
Oh, wow.
Oh, dear Lord.
You're making me cringe.
And I went to I went to the doctor and I said, I think I got a kidney stone. He says, are you a doctor? I said, no, lead me to the diagnosis. And then about 2 seconds later, he goes, you got a kidney stone. I said, well, can I have my money back? He said, absolutely not. And so I went home. I had Percocet or whatever they gave me, did not work. And this is after I began to walk my spiritual path consciously, and I had a mentor. The mentor I had did not jack around. He's one of those type of people, if you stand, you, I, and my friend are standing next to a river, and you mention that you have a fear of water, he's the type of guy that's going to grab you and throw you in the river. Right?
Oh, wow.
And after he began to school me, and I started sort of getting my feet moving forward about this spiritual practice and how to find the disposition to begin to move, I'm laying on the bed with this bout of pain for 11 hours. Oh, my God. And finally I said, I had enough of this. And I begin to realize something you said. I begin to realize, yes, this is painful. Accept it, Keith. It's pain. Now take away the idea of pain. It's just very intense feeling. Change it right away. And then I realized in that moment, we equate pain to suffering and suffering to death, and death being the end.
Yeah.
Boy, when I had that shift, it was gone. I did never pass a stone. But the other thing I want to bring up to you, I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
You said you never passed the stone?
I never passed the stone. I completely dissolved the darkness of the stone because it was an emotional thing that solidified into a shard. My emotional feelings got stuck. It was an appellate. But something else I want to ask you, sir. You had mentioned about when you're people you work with, or anyone in general, when they have emotional trauma, emotional pain, one way is to stay with the breath. Or as I mentioned, my mentor, he's the guy that's going to pick you up and throw you in the river if you say to him that you have a fear of water. Have you heard of this technique? I don't know if there's a name for it. Okay, I don't know if you can see me. Can you see me, JP?
Sure.
This good-looking guy over here, right?
Oh, you're the good-looking guy. Okay,
right, I'm the better-looking one of the two. Here's your emotional trauma, right? You're looking at it. And you don't name it, and you look at it, and you appreciate it, and you rub it. You name it George, you massage it, and you thank it, and all that cool, cliche, spiritual stuff, right?
Yeah.
Here's where the real work begins. Stuff. Here I go. What happens is, and I've experienced this many times in my life. For all you people out there, if something just happened to you in your life, your dog died, something traumatic happened, and it got you, and it really, really got you, and understandably so it got you. Take it and you look at it and you caress it and you hold it. And you begin to breathe your way through it, because the light will begin to dissipate this darkness that so wants to grab onto you. Because if you let it stick, if you let it integrate and stick, then presumably you have much more work to do on the backside. Have you ever heard of this technique, sir?
No, but I love it. I mean, that kind of pieces together a couple of, I would call it equations that are in my wheelhouse. But ultimately, bringing the breath to discomfort is something I'm a huge fan of. So I like just the deliberate, direct way in the technique you mentioned. So, yeah, I'm going to give that a test drive.
Are you familiar with the process of rebirthing, sir?
Yeah, yeah.
It's sort of the same idea, but spontaneously versus, for those out there who are not familiar with the practice of rebirth, it's literally breathing like I mentioned.
Yeah.
25, 30, 45 minutes, an hour and a half, however long it takes you. Well, then I guess your question would be, well, what's the reward? When you do it correctly, you will fly down. Is that right, JP?
I think so, for sure, brother.
Everyone, Keith Anthony Blanchard, host of Center of Light Radio, Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Tonight, my guest is JP Sears, and we're talking about how to be ultra-spiritual. JP has over 100 million views in this satire, this humorous, enlightening program he's doing called How to Be Ultra-Spiritual Comedy Series. JP, we're at the bottom of the hour. Would you give out your contact information, anything you want to announce to our listening audience, how they can find out more about you and the awesomeness that you are giving to the world, sir?
Yeah. If any of you lovely people care to connect with me, my social media handles are Awaken with JP. That's my handle all across the board. So if y'all would care to connect with me there, I'd love to make the connection.
JP, are you open to a few questions from the chat room? Because I'm sure they're probably in there just wringing their juicy hands.
Man, I think we better get on that, Paul, for sure. I'd be delighted.
Grog asked the question, and I think it's a pertinent question. Some guests get put questions too, and from my chat room, and I sometimes want to overlook them because the guests, we might be talking about Reiki, and someone wants to talk about aliens, so I kind of right?
Or aliens doing Reiki, like, let's not...
And Grog asked the question, meaning you, is he into the beliefs of alternate planes and the idea of star families outside of Earth? And I asked that question not because we're talking about that and you're the Reiki person, because I know that when you begin to do a very intense spiritual practice, be it yoga, be it meditation, be it whatever it is, when you are passionate, those inner doors to inner planes begin to open up.
Yeah.
So that being said, the question is, are you into alternate planes? I mean, do you like playing with those ideas and chatting with some of your buddies? Hey, man, I went to this plateau the other night and I hung out with this kind of thing.
Yeah, I am. And I'm a big fan of believing nothing is as it seems. So, life as it seems, according to our five senses, seems like this is the plane of existence. But I think there's always significantly more that we don't know compared to what we do know, especially as dictated by the five senses. So, yeah, and I won't pretend to have firsthand conscious experience and interface with the different planes of existence, and but it's something I'm fascinated by, and I firmly believe stuff is out there. It's just like a mystery to me. Like, I don't know any of the definites, but my fiance Amber will talk to me about the Pleiadians, and it's like, oh, awesome. Like, yeah. And when I think about, the evidence, the idea of, are there aliens out there? Like, I just think, like, there's got to be aliens out there, and they might be asking themselves, are there aliens out there? So I think the fact that we're here is the answer to the question.
We live in a little blue marble. God knows how many galaxies there are in this local star cluster. But that being said, we haven't finished discovering everything that's in the ocean.
Nor even in the human body, for crying out loud.
And, the day before yesterday, before we knew that thing that was recently discovered under the ocean in the human body, we never thought it to exist until someone says, excuse me, we just found something.
And we would guarantee it didn't exist because we didn't know about it. So, man, that I think a
right.
principal control mechanism of our egos is anything that it can't comprehend, it will not only pretend it doesn't exist, it'll have a relative sense of certainty it doesn't exist. And I think certainty is never correlated to truth. Certainty is just correlated to having a sense of safety.
UFO Nut from the chat room says, does JP get any negative feedback about injecting humor into this type of subject?
Man, very rarely anymore. When I first started making spiritual comedy videos, there was more. It's still a small percentage, but there was more of it then. And I think that's maybe because there weren't many people doing it. Like, I guess I'm sure there were some people doing it. I just didn't know of them. So but I think there's less of it now, probably because people have realized, like, I'm coming from a good place. I'm doing comedy on things that I highly respect rather than criticizing it. But there's also the element, I think, where now that I'm, I don't know, close to 100 videos deep into it, where maybe people realize, like, yeah, I'm not going to stop because people criticize me. So maybe what's
that would make a great JP ultra spiritual video right there.
Yeah, how to live your life while you worship criticism. Live your life dictated by criticism. Wow, I was gonna.
Time Traveler asked a question. Does JP have a spiritual guide that he personally turns, keyword, to when he feels out of sort? Or do you just turn inward and let that happen, or do you need a sounding board?
Yeah, my fiance Amber is my principal sounding board, so I think she would be the guide in this case, and she's a great one. And in me turning inward is also important as well, where when I'm out of balance, getting caught up in some kind of drama, usually it's of my own creation, probably always is, there's usually feelings I need to feel, that I need to breathe into, and some stories I need to disconnect from. It's like, man, some part of me is taking something so seriously right now. What story have I bought into so much that I don't even see that it's a story? It's like I'm living at first person. So there's definitely some introspection that needs to happen, and a lot of times, the outer sounding board of Amber and a couple other close friends of mine will help direct me into my wiser parts that can help me out.
Patrice from the chat room asked a question. How do you help get over grief of a lost pet? Patrice, I would like to offer this to you, and then JP can support or go in any direction he likes about that very question. Patrice, the first thing I would like you to do, I understand the process of grief, but are you of the mindset that you have lost something? Because in the idea of losing something keeps you and your conscious connection to your loved one, be it a parent, be it a human being, be it your fur babies, is what will create the rift. It's the first wall, as if something has left. What I invite for you to do is allow their passing to be, and appreciate it. Love it for what it is. In short, my mother, I'm going to use a different analogy. I had a friend of mine who was shot in front of me in a bar when I was playing music, right? And when I ran up to her during the break, I put my hand, I held her head in one hand and her hand in the other. And strangely, magically, beautifully, when I began to say the act of contrition in my own way in her ear, the horrible thing that happened, the negative, powerful negative thing that happened, the evil thing that happened, the fear-based thing that happened, it all went away just magically. I saw something pass through me that was so beautiful, that I was able to be a part of someone's experience, birth experience. And it changed the whole dynamic for me. And I used that very same practice, disposition when my mother passed. I had allowed myself to not move into grief. Of course, there's going to be some missing that happens. But if you can help yourself move through the illusion of having lost something, I call them just invisible people now. JP, your thoughts?
And yeah, I love that perspective, brother. And just adding a little bit of additional food for thought to the table. Yeah, I think I would add feeling your feelings is important. And I think letting yourself go into the grieving process of the pet by feeling your feelings, letting yourself feel like you're falling apart is helpful. So you're not resisting it anymore. And then also, I have the belief that our pets essentially love us enough that they will eventually leave us for our benefit. And I think Our pets oftentimes will be little mirrors for us, showing us a piece of our beautiful, pure, innocent inner child. And we see it in the pet, and we love it, and we need the pet to reflect it to us because we don't otherwise know how to connect to it inside of us of our own accord. So there's this little mirror, your dog, your cat, and you see it, you love it. Feels like home because it is home. And I think what we love is the piece of us that we project onto our animal. But we need the mirror of them, or else that piece would be so deep inside of us we'd never see it. So once that piece of us has been brought to the surface enough, the dirt's been brushed away, there our pet goes, loving us enough that they leave us. Now I think we do their life a great service, and we really respect them, and we really show them love when we begin really searching for, what about myself? Was my puppy dog, was my kitty cat showing me? If we're willing to find it and reclaim this lost innocent part of us, I dare say our pet's life will have been more than purposeful.
And in that is the connection I just mentioned. There is no loss, because when you capture that part of yourself that seemingly has left, you are now back consciously connected to that aspect that has came to Earth to spend a little bit of time with you, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, if you're looking in the mirror, and you've been looking in the mirror for 10 years, and you're all googly-eyed and just so, smitten with who you're looking at in the mirror, and then someone takes the mirror. Of course we're going to have grief. We will think we lost something that, as you're saying, Keith, it's still there. So it's like learning to see and feel our innocence, even though we don't have the mirror in front of us, it's still there. So it's like now we have to see it with our feelings rather than seeing it with our eyeballs that have a furry reflection.
Wow, I felt that one. Ooh. Henry O from the chat room says, Keith, I'd imagine that type of stuff never leaves you. How do you forgive an act like that? I'm assuming you're referring to the person who murdered a friend of mine in front of my face. Like I mentioned, I had the fear, I had the anger, I had the grief, I had all that, but as soon as I touched her, it went away. In that moment, I realized that there was a greater force at work than what I was assuming was taking place. Long story short, 2 weeks before this event, I saw her in the bar. I was eating food because I got there early because I don't like to set up and have a time crunch to sound check. She began to tell me how much she wants to die because she misses her ex-boyfriend who had died. And I warned her, and I said, Amber, you need to be careful about what you're affirming to the universe. Keith, you don't understand. I miss him so much. Next week, the same process happened. That night, out of nowhere, before I left her presence, I said, does your ex-husband bother you? She was strange with Keith. About 8 months ago, he left me alone. I said, well, that's awesome. I got to go set up. That night, during the break, he found $2 to scratch for change, paid his way into the door, looked around the room, found her, walked up to her, and shot her in the back dead. So this being said, how could I hold anger and not have an act of forgiveness? This was orchestrated in front of my face for 2 weeks.
Wow.
She was going to pass, and she professed that to me, even though she was not aware of it. So because of the beauty that I was able to ride like a conscious life stream in a raft to touch an essence of myself and her and spirit, I was elated in the blessing that was given to me. Keith, you have been chosen to say the last loving words in this person's conscious ear. This is a gift given to you by Amber and to my spirit. How could I be angry? He was a catalyst for something beyond my own understanding till this day.
Wow, that is fascinating. And Keith, could I just follow up to that viewer's question?
Brother. This is your platform.
How would you define forgiveness in a nutshell?
Realizing that nobody is a victim and nobody is a perpetrator.
I like
it's
that.
All divinely orchestrated, solely, S-O-L-E-Y, solely, S-O-U-L-Y, for one's expansion into expansion, and we repeat the cycle until we find ourselves so hyper expanded, all those things we thought we were disconnected from, not just intellectually. Here, we know it. We don't know it because we read something, we're kind of really starting to believe it. Just because my eyes are closed right now, you can bet I am aware of all these things that are surrounding me. The taste in my mouth, the feeling on my skin, the fact that I'm talking, peripherally aware. When you live in that kind of expansion, you're on your way home. In a body.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, sir? What is your take on your truth about forgiveness and how that works for you?
And, I love your definition of it, your perspective of it. I think it's very, very parallel with mine. I think typically how I define forgiveness is understanding ourselves, understanding the other person. And I think true forgiveness is truly understanding ourselves. Where I think the illusion of forgiveness is when we're trying to forgive another person, which can absolutely keep us locked into a phase of victimization. So I just absolutely loved it when you said forgiveness is understanding there's no victim, there's no perpetrator. It's probably an awareness beyond the illusion of what happened. And I think that's a beautiful place to get to.
Now, mind you, listening audience, a place that I am very steadfast, I stand very firm in. Forgiveness is an after the fact thing, right?
Yeah.
But that being said, if you're somewhere and someone is violating your perimeter, forgiveness has nothing to do with tolerating people's bad behavior whatsoever. And in that moment, if you have to, quote, fire back, however that needs to be, to right quote the situation, it is allowed without karma. But all that being said, after the event transpires, if you have to defend yourself, however, there is work that needs to be done as to why one brought this unconsciously into one's experience in the first place. You dissipate that work right in then and there, it's gone. But if you let it sit and sit and sit and sit and fester and fester and fester, unconsciously or not, this begins to bring back your experience. Wouldn't you think so, JP?
Man, yeah, 100%. I love that. I mean, what I heard you say is you have to have a backbone. You have to assert boundaries. Otherwise we're essentially victimizing ourselves under the guise of someone else is victimizing us. But, if we become the passive doormat and allow it, then truly our self is the only person to forgive. And I dare say we're mounting bad karma against ourselves there. So yeah, brother, I absolutely love that.
Yeah, if we become a passive doormat, you can bet there are many upon many people who will come ring your doorbell.
Yeah, I agree. And even when the quote unquote atrocities happen to us, whatever they might be, man, it is radical self-responsibility in the best sense of the term to, after the fact, take a look at what was my role in this? Like, what was this to teach me? How did I unconsciously create this? How was this for my benefit, even though it was obviously, at least perceptually, against me in the moment? But I think that radical self-responsibility really allows us to drink in the lessons that life serves up.
JP, I know you do a lot of speaking publicly. When you speak, for example, I don't remember, that cold medicine is like the ayahuasca. it's taking me to another level. But all that being said, when you speak, do you normally speak about one particular topic, for example, emotional healing, or do you move around depending on the event, or is that kind of like your tour right now?
Yeah, I'll move around depending on the event. The most recent event I was speaking at, I spoke on the topic called creating an unbeatable heart. So how to get in touch with your heart and follow it as the north star of your life. And then the three shows I did before that were just comedy shows. So I'm doing a lot of material on different topics and also lacing in sincere perspectives in there. So yeah, a lot of times it's dependent on the gig, if you will, but it's always within the realm of self-growth and self-realization, which, by the way, I mean, what isn't within those realms? If you get into anything deep enough. So, but yeah,
So
anything
are you
within
doing
those
any
realms.
stand-up? Are you doing any stand-up?
Yeah, I am. For my, I did three comedy shows in 3 different cities in 3 days last week or the week before, and man, it was great. And I think what I liked best about that was I didn't put myself into the quote unquote stand-up box. Whereas, stand-up comedy, it's a great art form in and of itself, but there's a little bit of a box. But I said, what I'm going to do is I'll stand up, but I'll be JP Sears. And if I have a sincere perspective to lace into the subject matter of this joke, I'm going to do it, even though that's not quote unquote stand up. So, for lack of a better term, yes, I've been doing stand up, but what I like best about it is me giving me permission to be JP, not just a stand-up comedian while I'm doing stand-up. And yeah, I'll be doing a lot more of it.
I bet you were hit. Honestly, be honest. You can brag. I mean, did it work? Did you pull it off effortlessly? Was it good?
Well, yeah. And I'm going to give you a confession, Keith. First off, yeah, the shows went great. I was thrilled. Great response with the audience. But here's the confession. I had it easy where the theaters we did the shows in, that was my audience. They were coming to see me. So with normal stand-up comedy, a comic gets on stage, just a comedy club full of people drinking. They don't know him or her from anybody else. So the comic has to win the audience over real quick, or they don't win the audience over. But that's a big part of that pure art form, is winning the audience over. So in a way, I had it easy because through my videos and enticing people to come see me live, people wouldn't have come saw me if I hadn't already won them over in some regard. So in other words, I was already in with people. We already had rapport. So it's like we didn't have to stand on ceremony and get to know each other. It's just like, yeah, let's dive in and have a good time here.
So, JP, you're not doing work. I'm going to paint a little picture here. You're not doing, per se, spiritual work, but you're doing a public speaking gig. What would be your topic of choice? Throughout the entire spiritual subject book, what would be your thing to get up there and talk about, just because it makes you wet?
I love it. Well, one of my most wet topics there is saying yes to your weirdness. Man, I think, speaking on the topic of weirdness, I'm very passionate about that, because I think weirdness in and of itself, that's not the passion, but where weirdness leads us, that's what I'm passionate about, which is always to our authenticity. And I think where authenticity leads us, that's the real passion. And I think that's connection to our higher self. So, but I think weirdness is a very intriguing bridge of subject matter to speak on. So it does light me up and make me a little bit wet, as you mentioned.
And I love that you mentioned passion. Passion is a fire. It consumes. It takes no for an answer. It will not take no for an answer. It burns. It burns reality into an experience. And the other side, and that's the roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty kind of thing. And it may take 1,000 years. And if it takes 1,000 years, I'm going to start the project now, and I'm going to move forward until I achieve the goal. Goal meaning the journey, of course, but I'm doing this journey for a reason, to achieve my objective. And passion is the other side of the coin. It's that I'm serious. I mean it.
Yeah.
It's the grandmother's bosom. It's that place where there's no thought. It's just the joy, the simplicity of it all. Can you tell me a little bit before, dear Lord, we're at the top of the hour, a little bit about passion, your thoughts about how it works to make things move in one person's life?
Yeah, I think passion is the raw energy of our heart. And I think our heart is one of our greatest assets here on this human plane. And research has been done that shows the electromagnetic field of the heart is 5,000 times stronger than the electromagnetic field of our head. Our head's awesome, but it's not to be worshipped. So if we're not in touch with our passion, we don't have a source of fuel that's 5,000 times stronger than our head. So I think, none of us would say like it's a bad idea to get passionate, Yeah, we all know it's a great thing, but the question is, how do we get in touch with our passion? How that visceral feeling that's in our body, it comes from our heart. And I think in order to get passionate about something, it's not really a matter of finding the something, but it's a matter of finding the feeling. And I think whatever our circumstance is, how we can find the feeling of passion is get deeply in touch with our why, our purpose. So you're doing this show, Keith, and I can tell you have passion for it. I can tell you have a lot of passion for your work. So I'm guessing you're a guy who feels great purpose in your work. You're a guy who, for us to find our purpose, we can just really get in touch with our why. Why do I do this? Why should I do this? Why am I really called to do this? That gets us in touch with our purpose, which I think is beyond our small little human selves. And I think our purpose is then the funnel that brings passion into our being.
JP, we have 2 minutes. Can you give us a final thought, sir?
Man, I think life is too short and too important to take seriously. And I mean that in the best sense of the term of importance. I think oftentimes we disrespect our life by getting serious about it. And I think seriousness is a fear-based consciousness. Seriousness is a constricted, controlling consciousness of our psyche. So, that's not to say we shouldn't look at things as important. It's like, I think they're so important that we shouldn't be serious about it. We can be sincere. We can be playful. But seriousness, I think, is a fear-based mechanism that's very seductive. It's very limiting. And it's not expansive. It's constricting. It's controlling. So I think a great opportunity for growth that any one of us has is we can take a look at our lives and ask ourselves, what do I take too seriously? Is it money? Is it a relationship? Is it our kids? What is it? Is it like this deadline I have at work tomorrow? So whatever it is we take too seriously, once we identify it, we're looking at something that we're afraid of, or else we wouldn't have the fear-based consciousness of seriousness come up, so that we can then ask ourselves, like, what am I afraid of here? And let's listen for our answer rather than avoiding our answer by compensating for it by dwelling in the land of seriousness.
JP Sears, thank you for being a humorous, insightful guest here on Center of Light Radio. You're welcome here anytime, sir.
Keith, thank you, brother, for being your weird self and for having me.
Right. All right. I'll be in touch with you soon, sir. We'll do some chit-chat, and I got some things I want to send you. And much love to you, buddy. I really respect and appreciate what you're doing very powerfully, I thought.
Sounds great, Keith. Much love back at you, brother.
Thank you, buddy. Everyone, JP Sears, you can find more about this phenomenal, funny individual. He will enlighten you with sarcasm. Dear Lord, he's amazing. Find more about him at www.awakenwithjp.com. Next week on Center of Light Radio, Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm always in this chair, usually. My show's going to be about, it's a Christmas special. Information that came through the Divine Principle, the book I channeled I don't like that word, but anyway, for 8 years, about the life of Christ and my personal experience with Yeshua in a dreamscape that he took me out, and I spent 2 weeks in an 8-hour sleep period showing me a metaphorical vision of humanity's future. Be here for that show. Keith Anthony Blanchard, host of Center of Light Radio. I love you, I love you, I love you. Remember, when you lay down at night and you have nothing to do, you might as well be doing something, and that something is breathing. Breathing with passion, breathing with sincerity. Fall into that space, fall into the stargate. And if you breathe because you really, really mean it, and you really, really want something that's beyond your scope of understanding, dear Lord, 10 minutes later of this breathing, you will touch the cosmic life stream. And in that profound, deafening silence is everything you could possibly imagine. Peace, love, and light.